Welcome to Boiler House Garage. A bit of a continuation from the last video where I noticed the coil was looking a little bit worse for wear. I've bought this new one. It's actually backwards, but of course this bracket isn't attached to the coil itself. It can be loosened and spun around. Can also be mounted upside down if you need to, but it'd look a bit silly, and I don't really want to be drilling any new holes into this. You may have noticed a few moments ago that the new coil says it's a 12 volt ballast type, whereas this with a different part number says electronic coil. This could well have led to some of my running issues if this coil was designed for electronic ignition, so it's important to use a ballast type for contact brake ignition systems. It appears this one's been here a little while. I think these have got a bit rusty underneath the wheel arch here, so I'm going to have to be a bit aggressive to take them out, and I'm just going to replace the bolts. Now with those removed, I can fit the new coil with this nice shiny bracket, and I'm going to use some wing nuts instead, so it's sort of a quick release. And I could also loosen them to adjust it as far over as possible, just to give this coil lead a little bit of slack. You may have to actually bend the bracket slightly just to fit the contours of the inner wing. You do want a little bit of slack with a coil lead, because obviously the engine will rock on its on the engine mounts, and the coil is fixed to the inner wing. If the engine starts missing or rocking around or something, you could actually rip the coil lead off of the coil or the distributor cap, and then you've lost all your ignition. So let's give it a try. Well, the good news is it started. The bad news is she's running like a bag of shit. I am clutching at straws a little bit here, but I'm probably going to have to get some new points, because that's the only thing I sort of haven't changed the ignition side. That's assuming that it's ignition. Since this is my only car at the moment, it's not running well enough to make the almost 12-mile round trip to the nearest motor factors that would still supply ignition parts for a car of this age. I'm rather embarrassingly going to have to borrow my mother's bicycle, wicker basket and all, to make the trip to get the new points and condenser. One heart attack later, I'm finally back with a new set of points. I have done a YouTube Shorts video of changing these points. If you'd rather watch that, or if you have already seen it, you can skip forward this bit. Just doing it in a little bit more detail here. You just remove the cap and pull off the rotor arm. Got a little plastic cover in here. First thing you need to do is remove this ground lead, or ground wire technically. Then you have to undo this screw. Next you can lift the whole point set away. It's very grubby in here, so I'm actually going to give it a good clean up. That's a bit better. You also want to clean this these cam lobes. There's 4 of them, obviously, as it's a 4-cylinder engine. You wipe off all the old grease and dirt from these. It's nice these days you can actually buy a little tub of Vaseline designed for lips. It's not quite as embarrassing as buying a big tub. But if you just put Vaseline or any brand of petroleum jelly onto these cam lobes to lubricate them, Now you just want to take a few drops of ordinary motor oil and drip them into this soft part in the centre here. I'm actually using a straw here just to take a little bit out and put into this centre bit. You will literally just need a few drops, so I just need to soak up the excess here. Now we can fit the points. You'll see there's a little recess there for the hinge. If you put that bit in there first, it just helps this all sit in place nicely. If you leave the lead undone for now, because you'll need to secure it with the screw, but just leave it finger loose, because we actually have to gap the points, and to do that you need to use a feeler gauge. But first, if you rotate the engine so any one of these 4 lobes is at its top dead centre, so it's at a point where it's going to be opening the points. From there, that's how you correctly set the gap. Now you need a feeler gauge. On this setup it is 18 Vauxhall, which is 0.018 of an inch, and in metric that is 0.457 millimeters. If you place a feeler gauge between the points themselves, which is here, you can now tighten down the retaining screw hard so it will hold the actual body of the points in place, and it's the cam lobe itself which is opening the points to the correct gap. Now you can remove the feeler gauge and double check it to make sure there's just that very slight drag, just to make sure it is gapped correctly. Now you can fit the ground lead, or again ground wire as I should be saying. Refit your little cap, the rotor arm, and finally the distributor cap. Though I'm not holding up much hope, the points at least I know are new, so let's try it again. Well, it's certainly better than it was earlier, but we're still not quite there yet.